I want to talk about how long it actually takes to decondition, and if it actually takes 7 years, because that is what he provided as a timeline for people to actually decondition once they learn about their design. And I wanted to talk about from the perspective of not how long it's going to take or what you need to do to decondition, share my own experiences from when I discovered human design to where I am now, and I am at the 4th year of human design, technically. I do want to point out that I haven't been practicing human design or my strategy authority fully these 4 years, because I think that's the reason it's Ra points out that it takes so long, that it actually takes 7 years. And essentially it depends on, I think it depends on where you are, spiritually. If you've already been awakened in your spiritual journey and you've already been in touch with your intuition, your gut feeling, I have correlated human design or the authority as that's your gut feeling. That's what I've come to understand it as, that the authority is actually in human design, is actually the gut feeling that we often get in our bodies, and that's going to be different for everyone else depending on how they connect to their intuition. Have a different, I guess, I wanted to have a raw and authentic expression of, in the 4 years that I have known human design, even if they have been sporadic where I haven't fully been engrossed in human design, what I have taken away from those years, what in deconditioning, and what I might recommend. I will say getting into human design as a sacral being, the first year was the toughest. Also, I was going through a lot of fucking shit. So it just depends on where you are in your life. If you're at a foundational space in your life, discovering human design and following the strategy authority might be the pivot point to direct you to your path, or it might be the destructor. And I think it also depends on what channels you have, what gates you have that might trigger you to living your authentic life. Because also I've noticed that our intuition outside of human design, but I correlate, for me personal, my own personal experience, I've noticed that the authority is actually your intuition. So if you have a hard time figuring out your authority, just basically see it as that's your intuition. Wherever you feel that in your body, that's basically the language that human design uses for your intuition. My biggest struggle when going into human design is my open head, open ajna. While I've gotten a lot better at like being more reflective on my open centers, I'm definitely still deconditioning, which I think is because at certain points I've had to pause from my experiment and kind of take a step back. And I think that's based off my line 1, line 3. I think as a line 1, line 3, when you're deconditioning, I wouldn't recommend this. So if you're a line 1, really be conscious of how engrossed you get into learning everything about human design. That is my regret, but I don't think I could have stopped it, because that's just how I am. When I learn something new, I try to get as much information as I can until I'm literally sick of it. If there's a song I really like, I literally listen to it on repeat until I literally don't want to hear it anymore. Like, I literally don't want to fucking hear it. It's not in my line one isn't in subconscious, so it's interesting to think about how when I'm reflecting on my 4 years beginning my human design journey, I'm thinking about like if I could have resisted, and I don't think I could have. I think that was part of the process of just being fully engrossed and then being disgusted and taking a step back. How I was introduced to human design was other people talking to me about it. So I feel with an open head and open ajna, and I responded incorrectly to saying yes to a program, which in the end kind of backfired because I incorrectly listened to my sacral. As a sacral being, or any being, you really need to understand your authority and what your response is. I can't say anything about anyone else except my own, but my biggest regret is not fully understanding my sacral responses and my bodily. So I think being introduced to it to the wrong people, I think that was one of the issues. Like, I should have taken a step back and taken it as my own journey. Basically, for me, I see it as manipulation. It was basically conditioning and manipulating me to be like, oh, this is the thing you really need to like set your life forward. I still struggle with human design and following my strategy and authority. The best way I've seen it done in the year that I've gone back to it, in the year and a half that I've gone back to it, is not fully engrossing myself in it and just like letting my curiosity about human design and taking in little particles of it as I take interest in it, and then experimenting and then going back to it, and kind of basically it's like a yin energy where I'm not inserting myself into human design, or I'm not trying to understand all of it and then trying to implement everything. It's more organic. When I first began and was introduced to human design, it was very like I wanted to know everything, any kind of detail. It wasn't correct. Because I got into a human design certification program, which I never finished, because it wasn't my intent to become an HD teacher. So that was something I realized now was kind of conditioning from projection of someone else, from a projector, ironically, to try to sell her course to me. And because of my open head and open ajna, I'm very influenced. Even as a child, when I would watch movies, I would like implement the characters that I liked, and I would try to act like the characters. Could I have stopped that? Like, if I knew about human design, I would have stopped that, but there's no way of knowing human design before you know human design, and you're already in human design because it's an experiment. So you can't really control how you're going to respond. So yeah, I took on a very obsessive, I kind of got engrossed in it. I wanted to know every detail of it. And it's interesting looking back, because as a generator, we're here to master our own skills. We're here to master what lights us up. And the fact that I got into human design because of someone else's projection, the certification, while I did take something from it, it was a door, but it was about every type. And as a generator, I wasn't interested in being a human design teacher. I still am not interested in being a human design teacher. It's more from my own experience as a 1-3. I want to share my experience so that if like new people that are going into it, they can understand human design and from my own experience they can see how they can, no matter if you're a generator or not, you can then go from your own deconditioning where you are to be like, reflect on being more conscious of how you're being subconscious, your behavior is acting subconsciously. One of my biggest struggles when I first got introduced to human design was my open head and open ashna. There was a period where my mind, like there were so many shoulds, woulds, and I really struggled with, I was so frustrated with the fact that people were telling me, well, also it was super frustrating because I was hearing other generators talk about their experience of learning about human design, and like, oh, it was just so enlightening to like finally hear my sacral yeses and nos, and I just like, I just didn't have that. And it's only in the 4th year, only now, that I finally started, through some other people that I correctly responded to, I realized like what I'm starting to now, the 4th year is when I'm starting to understand what my sacral yeses and nos are. And also this was helpful in my process of being a preschool teacher because I was able to see outside of human design, but see how human design could be implemented, because children are by being in a room of children, you can kind of see which ones are generators, which ones are manifestors, and which ones are potentially projectors or reflectors, kind of the ones that are maybe more overstimulated from their environment, from people around them. But you can definitely know who the manifestors and who are the generators or MGs are, because they are very vocal and very sound activated. So that was fun and interesting just to observe how that can take space in reality, in the real world, essentially. Also, I was trying to pressure myself, comparing myself to where certain people already were in their human design process, and a lot of people were like, oh, you just have to follow your strategy and authority and everything will come in place. But I was still very much in my fear, and I think part of that was because I think the reason I'm only now connecting to my sacral sounds and understanding what my sacral sounds is because as a sacral being, I'm getting into my body. Recently, something that I'm doing is meditating on self-trust meditations to get myself to trust my intuition, because while I can reflect that I am making a good decision, there's still this fear. My first year was really, really difficult because very much in my mind, and it was just really hard to get in the lower part of my body because I was so much in my mind of I should do this, and like people are telling me to do things, and it didn't help that I was getting into a program incorrectly and someone was telling me like, oh, it was just bad because I was getting into a program of someone pressuring me even when I was like, I don't know, like, even when I was trying to practice my sacral sounds and trying to connect with my sacral, I recognize now that the I don't know was actually no, because as a generator, if it's not a yes, it's a no. And it's funny enough, the same person that told me that, was teaching me that, had pushed me into a program when I didn't get a yes. But at the same time, I don't think it could have been avoided. Like, I feel like the way I went into it might have been how I was designed to learn about human design, to like get in the experiment. Very much in my head, my ashna, but at the same time I was trying to force myself into correctly using my strategy and authority. So there was this like conflict of constantly, but then so that I really struggled. My mind, my open mind, conditioning of my open mind and my open ajna were really pushing me. And so there was just this constant, like I could feel in my body that there were things wrong for me. Like I didn't like the job I was in, so I would quit. But then there was this fear where I didn't trust following my intuition, and then I would get back into, so there was this cycle. Why I warn about, if you have a line 1, you will have the inclination to literally want to know everything and anything about the topic you are interested in. It will be obsessive depending on what are your other aspects in regards to your channel's gates, what your conditioning is. This was around the time, I think it was 2019, and there wasn't as many or as much information about human design as there is now, because so many people have been trained on it. So in that inclination, I felt even if I was incorrectly got into the program and didn't really finish it. And also as a line 1, the whole like human design certification doesn't really sit correct with me, because at the time, now I think people are pivoting where they are providing payment plans in order to be certified. But when human design was first being like pushed out, I feel like people were providing these like ridiculous prices and expecting people to basically go willing to go bankrupt, willing to go homeless in order to follow their strategy and authority. I guess that's what turned me off from human design and why I took a year off. I didn't know I would like go back into human design. I didn't know what was gonna happen, or if I was truly done with it. But I decided to just like take a break, and I took like basically a year off where I did other stuff. But then like it slowly trickled back, and the way I did it is, instead of being fully engrossed in it, I like took pieces here and there that I liked, and then I like would absorb the information before taking on new information. I learned from my first year to be more in the, because I feel like, yeah, my first year I was definitely taking on a yang energy where it was like initiating, and I was wanting to know everything, and I was like thrusting myself into human design. And then my second and third year taking on a more yang organic energy about human design, where if something pops into, so that's where the generator response is, if something comes into my aura, and that's how it happened. Like I was avoiding it, I didn't want to do anything about it, and there would be times where even when I like unfollowed everything about human design, even when that happened, like slowly end of my second year, I remember it like slowly trickled, and I could sense like, okay, yeah, I'm ready to go back into it. But I was like, I'm not going to like obsess about it, try to learn everything about it. So I think that's been helpful. But I will say my line 1 definitely triggered probably my open head and open ajna, where it was just like I was trying to push myself to listen to my strategy and authority, and that triggered my open centers to be like, no, no, no. Or it's like, is there any other way it could have gone though? I don't think so. Like, I think that's the way I was supposed to go regarding my line 1 and my line 3, because I think learning everything I wanted to know about human design and then being so disgusted that I take a year off actually helped my experiments. The line 3 of knowing like, okay, you tried to do that thing where you literally like, I don't know what the fuck happened, because you were literally obsessed with this thing. You still don't know what your fucking sacral responses. You haven't really been following your strategy and authority. Like, I would follow my strategy and authority, but then like my strategy to respond, and then I would go back into fear because my open head, open Ashna would be like, what the fuck is this? You're not listening to us? No, you are going to listen to us. Really tough, and I was going through a really tough time. And then my second and now third year, my second year I wasn't trying to like push myself, so I was still like giving myself space, but I still wanted to, like, when things would come into my vicinity, my aura, I'd be like, okay, I'm curious, I want to know more. Or if someone had a different perspective, I would like be doing something else, like making art and then listening to them. But I wasn't as like obsessed about it, or obsessed about knowing everything about it, so I wasn't like writing everything down. But I think it helped that the first year I already did that, so I knew the basics of human design. So I was like more like, oh, okay, like I'll pick up information here and there. But even at my third year, which is essentially what it is, I will say that I still struggle with like following my strategy and authority. I now can recognize when things are coming into my aura though. But the thing I struggle with, like now I feel like the open head and open Ashna still kind of an open throat still kind of comes through, but I'm able to recognize it and be like, okay, this is like other people pushing me, or I feel I need to talk, or I feel I need to say something, or I feel I need to learn something for someone else. And because your undefined centers, your open centers, are other people pushing onto you, because in those sectors they are defined and you're open, so they're pushing your defined centers, you're pushing onto, externalizing to others, because that's consistent energy in you. So in one way I realize is like, if I'm literally not thinking about anything, and then all of a sudden, and definitely if it comes out of fear, then yeah, it's from other people. Because it's not like, obviously if it's inspiring, it's your higher self. I would say like my second and third year kind of were integrated, because I was still, my second year I was still like, I was kind of like scared to get back into it, because I didn't want to like trigger myself, like trigger my open head and open Ashna, because I can confidently say having an open head, like I was so much in my head, like I literally felt, I remember telling someone, like she was I think certified from something else in human design, but I remember confiding in her and saying like, I feel like I'm literally going crazy. Like I feel like my head won't shut up. So I really needed that year off. So now in my third year, things that I feel I do understand, I've experimented with responding, and things do come into your aura as a generator of things to respond to if you're frustrated. But there is the push to say yes just because you're not happy with where you are, even when the thing outside of you. So that was another struggle. My second year, once I got back into it when I took a year off, then my well, technically my second year was I took a year off, but then my third year, actively second year being in human design, that was something I struggled with. Was I understood what the actual strategy was. Like I finally understood the strategy of to respond. That was something I did not understand my first year, I just like could not comprehend. I was like, what do you mean to respond? Like, I can't do anything. And I felt like I was like, well, then isn't going to a job like the not self? Because I'm like, I have to go. I don't want to go, but I have to go. And like, I have to initiate. And so I just couldn't comprehend. I really struggled with that because I was in so much in my conditioned mind and head. I've been conditioned to be a very logical and intellectualized person. So the idea of getting out, that's why I think I struggled so much getting out of my head and not giving my mind decisions, because I was like, what do you mean? Like, I can't use my mind to make decisions for me. That's where my power is. Like, I gave my mind so much power that taking that away was like, I felt like I was going crazy. So then my second year, or my third year, I guess, I finally started understanding what actually responding is, or how things actually come into my aura when I don't initiate. And I've noticed this by like simply, for instance, if I've called out from work because I didn't have the energy, because I'm burnt out, because I'm not using my sacral energy correctly, the job doesn't light me up. I've noticed, oh, I'm going to be so bored because I'm not going to have anything to do. But taking that time to practice my strategy helped me to understand how things do come, because there'll be emails that will help you and they'll get you to initiate or to respond. It feels like initiating because if you're actually responding, you feel like you're acting on, because it is a bodily thing. The sacral, yes, if you don't have got the comprehensiveness of your sounds yet, you can practice with like how you feel in your body. Like, if something is a yes, do you move forward? If something is no, do you kind of like step back? Kind of like the energy, well, I guess I have an open solar plexus, but kind of like the energy when you're with someone that you're curious about, you want to move towards that person. When you're around an energy that, like your boss, that you don't like because all they do is yell at you and micromanage you, you kind of like reconstrict or push back, or so it's really just listening to your body. But yeah, I started my third year, I started understanding what the actual strategy is. So my advice is, take small parts of human design and experiment with it, and take like foundational stuff of it, such as your type, such as your strategy, such as your authority, to really get the foundational part built up, and then you can learn about everything else. I wouldn't say that how I got into human design is wrong, because I feel like there was really no other way for me to get into, or not to get into human design that wasn't that way. And now in my fourth year is when I got into understanding my authority. Like, I took a sacral, like understanding your sacral yeses and nos, and to really understand what sounds I make, or like how practicing the yeses and nos. But I think that came around only because clearing out the mind, the head, and slowly getting into the body. And now my third year, technically it's my third year, fourth year in human design, if you don't count the year I took a break off, I was able to finally get into my body. So it's really about clearing, for me it was clearing my head, my ashana, and then getting to a point where I can get into my body, into the lower sectors. And I think when I got back after my break, I think taking it slow and being like, okay, I'm gonna practice. And I did like little things, like I would say, I'm gonna see what I have to respond to, what comes to me to respond to, and like what I feel about it. And another thing I would practice is I would practice like for a week, and I would write it out. Like I would make a list, like what are my yeses this week and what are my no's this week. And that will also helped me understand, like I would write like, this came up and it was a no, how did I react, did I make any sounds, like how did I feel in my body,